You're listening to the Road to Wisdom podcast, weaving stories told by wonderful minds about all things motherhood, health, intimacy, politics, nature, and everything in between.
Join us on an adventure discovering unique experiences that we can learn from to enhance the ways in which we live.
We are your hosts, Chloe
and Kashia. Hey guys, welcome to the Road to Wisdom podcast. We just wanted to do a quick little plug. We've got so many new followers and we're so excited. We've had quite a bit of growth recently and we would love to just put a shout out for everyone to help us grow our community. So we would love, if you're enjoying the content, to like our stuff. If you can share it on our on Instagram or any other social media platforms, and also subscribe and give us a review. It really, really helps us to secure epic guests. Segue.
Like my dear friend Kat Ritchson here today, which I'm so happy to be able to talk to you. We've known each other for a while now, haven't we? I was thinking about this last night. The first time I met you guys, we were all living in LA.
Yes.
And
that's right.
You and Alan had Brenton and I over for breakfast one morning.
I remember, yes.
And we only had one kid.
Right. I remember that. And I remember I was a Costco connoisseur and I had Aussie bites.
Yeah, I remember.
As part of our spread. And I think I won you over then. Did
yeah.
I?
Yeah, you totally did. But I remember you had all the boys. So you had all three kids. But I think you might have had, I don't know how young your youngest would have been then.
That was 2017.
Yeah.
And so Amory would have been 2. My youngest would have been 2.
But you had 3 and I had 1. And I was like, whoa, that is
and
a
now
lot.
you surpassed me.
And now I've surpassed you and have 4.
Yeah.
And
oh my gosh.
Yeah, we've kind of crossed paths so many times all over the world because Alan, your husband, has worked with Brenton so many times now. I feel like they've done a fair bit together now. But the most recent, they were on Titans together, obviously. So we were in Canada together a fair few times, and we got to spend some time together, and I got to know you more and more. And
I loved learning from you how to settle into a place. Like I remember you signing up for pottery classes and teaching us what you learned. Is that what you call them, pottery classes?
Yeah.
Or do you call it something else? Okay.
Yeah.
I remember thinking to myself, you can build a life while in transition, you know?
Yeah, because it's not easy, hey, especially when you got to move somewhere every however long the shoot is. So it could be like 2 months, it could be like 8 months.
Absolutely. You're there long enough to need a routine, but not long enough to want to lay down roots, you know? Because it's a place so painful to uproot.
Yeah, a place like Toronto where you go so frequently. And so you've done the tourist stuff, but you're like, I'm only going to be here for a couple of months. What am I going to do? Right. But anyway, I really wanted to talk about, I really wanted to hear about yours and Alan's story and how it all came to be. And just the trials and tribulations and the journey of parenting, because I know we're on a very similar journey, you and I, of parenting and supporting our husbands while they're in this crazy world of being an actor. And so I would love for you to tell us about the start of you and Alan.
All right, yeah. Well, okay, so we met in 2000. I would have been 16 and he was 17. And we haven't been together since then, but we certainly dated, at the beginning. I'll never forget, I was in a ballet class and he was a musical theater major. And it was required that he take a certain amount of dance credits for his major. So, he was in my dance class basically. And I'll never forget seeing him for the first time in the studio. I turned to my friend Miriam and I said, "Who is that?" And I remember actually, this is just me and my goldfish type memory. The next week I saw him again and I said to Miriam, "What's his name again?" But I didn't forget after the second time. He at some point came up to me and asked me about, I figure skated at the time, or I was, for a good portion of my teen years, I I trained in figure skating, and he asked me about that, and we just got to chatting. And that first summer, he thought it was a fling, and I didn't. And he ended it at the end of the summer, and I've made him pay for it ever since.
I bet he regrets it.
Oh yeah. I mean, he still justifies it. He's like, you lived 30 minutes away. I couldn't afford gas to get to it. Like, for him, 30 minutes was, I lived in a very small town. We would drive 30, 40 minutes just to go watch a movie in a movie theater. I grew up on a farm, like 90 acres. I was used to going anywhere. There was no walking anywhere, if we needed to be in civilization. So I was like, 30 minutes, that's nothing. I mean, I would drive 30 minutes to the ballet
to the end
class,
of your driveway.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So yeah, he says it was about the economics. Like, for him as a high schooler, 30 minutes of gas money wasn't practical. But yeah, and then later on in college, a few years later, I was at the University of Florida, and he was actually modeling down in Miami. And through a mutual friend, we got back in touch, and it was kind of history after that. So,
my gosh. So how long after that did you guys get married?
we got married in 2006. I think we dated a year, and then we were engaged a year. So it was like 2.5 years of college. Was that? So I graduated college, I think, let's see, our anniversary is May 12th. So I graduated a week before that. What is that, May 5th? We got married May 12th. We went on our honeymoon, and then we moved to LA, right after that. So it was like a lot of life changes all.
So were you
all
like
at once.
19?
I would have been 21 or 22.
And
yeah.
when you moved to LA, was Alan already like in that Hollywood-ish scene? Was that like the trajectory of his life already?
Yes, I would say so. I mean, he actually moved out to LA for music. He's very musical. That's his first love. And he moved out there for music, and then and modeling. I remember it was kind of like he modeled in Miami, and I remember his agent there. He heard about a guy moving to LA, and his agent was kind of not helping him, but he was getting him in contact with people out in LA to help him get work out there. And Alan said, hey, maybe I want to do that. Oh, but I guess I'm leaving this part out. My sister moved out to LA before anybody, and I interned with her at Comedy Central for 2 summers. And Alan came out to visit me one year when I was interning there, and he realized he would like to build something in LA. So I think he saw the opportunity there. But yeah, music was his first love. And I'm remembering this time when we must have been engaged. And Chloe, when you were out there, did you ever go to the 3rd Street Promenade?
No, I didn't.
No? Okay. It's just like a popular shopping area, outdoors, lots of street performers and stuff. And I remember saying to Alan, he had an album at the time that he self-produced. I was like, we're going to go to the Promenade, and we're going to make hundreds of copies of your CD, and we're going to sell them there. And so I forced him to do this. This was at the time, like, you had a boom box, a CD player, like this big. And we took that out there. We realized we didn't have an extension cord to plug the boombox in. So we had to go to a Home Depot, go get a power cord, got it all set up in the middle of this street that people are walking. And, we have this box of CDs, and I'm like, I am forcing him to do this. I guess I believed in him that much. It was like, I see this. This is what you're meant to do. Let's go do it. And this guy walked up to us he was like dressed kind of like a clown. And he was like, excuse me, do you have a permit for this? We didn't know what he was talking about. It turns out everybody there who's like a street performer had to get a permit and, was legitimately performing business in certain slots, like 2 to 4 p.m. You'll be doing your clown act, So we were like totally going rogue, stepping on everybody's toes doing this and had no idea. We felt so bad. We like packed up everything and left. But I think we sold a few CDs. Like I remember.
And that's where it all started.
That's where it all started. Yeah. That's when Alan knew, I'm pretty serious about your career. We're going to do what it takes.
Oh my God.
That's amazing. And what were you doing at this time? So you were in LA.
That would have been a summer that I was interning, I think. I interned at Comedy Central. Well, I interned 1 year and then I was a temp another summer between college. So I went to the University of Florida. I studied finance and Russian. And then in the summer, I would go out and visit my sister in LA, basically.
Did you say you studied Russian finance?
I studied finance and I minored in Russian.
Right.
Wow.
Kat, that could come in pretty handy in the future, if you know what I mean.
I know, no kidding. Except for the fact that I've forgotten almost every single bit of it. I think my greatest fear is somebody coming up, knowing that I studied Russian, coming up and talking to me in Russian, like assuming that I still remember any of it.
Oh my gosh.
Because I just haven't practiced it.
It should be easy in Toronto. There's so many Russians in Toronto.
That's true. And also LA. LA actually has a heavy Russian population. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I actually got to the point in college where I was like dreaming in Russian, but
you've made it when you're dreaming in that language.
I know. It's amazing though. It's also such a testament to how the brain works, how quickly we can adapt one way or the other, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So after you guys had great success selling Alan's CD.
Yeah, some bootleg CDs.
Yeah. Had he booked like any bigger jobs, or not any bigger jobs, just like any acting gigs by then?
Yes, I remember he worked on a movie called The Butcher, which was a very low budget horror film. And I think that was his first thing, or maybe it was Aquaman on Smallville, but those two things came very quickly. Yeah, and I remember when he called me to tell me he got Aquaman. I was at college and, jumped up and down screaming when he told me that he got it. It was really fun. But those Aquaman came really fast and luckily was I wouldn't say a steady thing because it was a guest star appearance, but he got to be in a few seasons, as a guest. And that was a nice start to his career.
When did you guys have you get pregnant? Like it mustn't have been that far after.
Yeah, well, we waited a little while. We got married in 2006 and we had Caleb in 2012.
Yeah, okay.
So, and that was actually intentional.
Can I ask, how old were you when you had your first?
How old was I? 2012. I was born in 1984. What is that, 28 or 29?
Yeah.
Sorry,
okay.
I don't know anything about my life.
Brain.
I just float around. I was either 28 or 29.
If you ever forget, you could just Google yourself. It says that.
Yeah.
It says that you got married when you were 17, and a whole bunch of other really weird, not true information.
Wait, is that for real?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it says that you were born in like 1990 or something.
What? No, I was born in 1984.
So this is a note.
Bizarre.
If anybody Googles like people that they think that they want to know, it's not going to be true.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that is crazy. But I don't really want to Google myself. It's like,
come on, give it a try.
I have PTSD from that kind of thing.
I know, it's really daunting.
Yeah.
So after you guys had Caleb, which was obviously something that you guys planned, how did you guys navigate parenting a newborn, living in LA? Alan obviously had a couple of, he'd worked a fair bit by then.
Yeah.
How was it?
Gosh, well, we didn't stay for long. I know that. So Caleb was the birth of Caleb, which I'm not going to go into all the details. I was pregnant. Alan booked Hunger Games, which was such a huge opportunity. Hunger Games filmed in Atlanta, and Caleb's due date was September 22nd. He ended up coming September 18th. But Alan was supposed to be, he was torn on whether or not to take it because he knew that it meant that he might miss the birth of Caleb. And I was like, this is similar to the CD story. This is too big of an opportunity. You have to go. It's fine. Women used to have babies on the side of the road. I can do this, no problem. So I was ready to give birth by myself. I'm just now realizing what a daunting
looking
process
back.
that is.
Yeah.
But it just so happened, I can't remember the details of why there was a hiatus with Hunger Games, but for some reason there was a hiatus with Hunger Games that it was 2 weeks long. Alan got to come home. I had Caleb in that 2-week window, and then he had to go back. So when Caleb was about 2 or 3 weeks old, I actually flew from LA to Florida, which is where my parents live and his parents live. And I spent my maternity leave there to have the extra help. And in Florida, I say Florida, people automatically think Miami, but we're actually in northern Florida, like near Alabama, which is where the accent comes from. So it's not a far drive from Atlanta. It's about 4 or 5 hours. So I was able to go up to Atlanta quite a bit with Caleb as a newborn and visit him while he finished up Hunger Games.
Wow.
But I mean, I'm talking all technical details. What was it like?
I feel like though you just painted the picture of what it's like to be
a
mother or
so.
a pregnant mother partner to an actor.
Yeah.
Yes,
there is no.
You're right. I mean, you basically, this sounds depressing, but it's not, especially when, like, I'm very enthusiastic about Alan's career. I believe in him more than any, like, I know what he's capable of and I want all wonderful things for him. But you basically prepare yourself. You just assume they're not going to be there,
Yeah.
and then you're not disappointed, right?
Yeah.
No, because there's no point. There's no point in always resisting what all those possibilities are. Because my favorite thing about their jobs, and I'm talking about Brenton and Alan's, is that the possibilities are endless. The sky is the limit. You never know when you're going to get a call about some amazing project that they can be a part of. And I mean, that also comes with a lot of disappointments when you think something's going to happen, then it doesn't. But because of that sky's the limit mentality, I just feel like the cost is worth it when it comes to having to do things on my own occasionally. I just feel like it's worth it.
That's going back to flying at 2 weeks postpartum.
Oh, yeah.
That's huge. Because I went on my first flight 4 weeks postpartum, and
did you?
Yeah, and like I obviously didn't have a lot of the information back then that I have now, and we've been talking a lot on, that postpartum period being like you're so open and you're so vulnerable, and like just like to information, to the elements, to all of that stuff, which kind of like feel it more as you have more babies. But
absolutely,
to like you, especially like because you were still quite young, like how was it? Like, did you notice being on a flight when you're like just like your whole, like everything's so expansive and like you're still kind of in that warped phase of postpartum with a newborn? I mean, I'm a germaphobe every time I have a newborn baby.
Okay.
Yeah, like being on a flight and around other people and having other people's, like you're so open to other people's energy as well. I feel like it can be quite a big deal. Just the flight by itself.
I probably thought of that for the first time maybe around COVID. I thought, oh yeah, I flew when Caleb was 2 weeks old. Maybe that was such a good idea. Like maybe I should have waited a little longer. I had no idea. I think I was in such survival mode. Like I needed to be around other humans to be able to keep both me and my baby alive, that it was like, I have to get to my parents no matter what, Yes, I actually remember the kindness of the woman sitting next to me. It was one of the first times I ever splurged and bought a first class ticket because I thought I need the space to be able to hold the baby
Good.
and everything.
Good plan.
And and I had a woman next to me, a little old grandmother type, like she was probably in her 70s, maybe 80s, and she was so sweet. It was like, oh, it makes me tear up just thinking about it because I like had no idea what I was in for, you know, I didn't know what I was doing. And she immediately offered she was like, if you at any point need to go to the bathroom, just let me know and I'll hold them. And, it was just so sweet to get that kind of um, village type feel of somebody who
Yeah.
actually cares, Um,
Yeah, some
that was
people
really
pay
sweet.
a lot of money for a doula, a postpartum doula. You paid for a first class flight to Florida.
Oh, right.
But I reckon the granny part was
The granny part was what you paid for. Yeah.
Right. Yes, you're exactly right. Yeah, and I think about now just how often you see complaints online about kids making a noise on a flight, and how cruel it can be out there, especially for moms. Alan goes around with the boys, and it's like there's a parade. Oh, look at you doing that for your kids. Oh my gosh. And when I go out with the boys, it's kind of like, I better not hear a peep out of him. That's what it feels like, at least.
Yeah.
And or
it's
that's
so
the reaction
true,
that
isn't it? Like if you were out with like all three boys, everyone would be like, oh, you got your hands full. Oh my God, I don't know how you do it. But if Alan goes out, what a hero. Look at him. Oh my God, he's nailing this. What a good dad.
Yeah, great dad. What a great dad. Oh God, we can all relate to that. Hey?
Yes. It's so true. And I think about these expectations for kids. I mean, look, nobody wants to be on a plane with a crying kid. But the parent is the one who wants to be there the least, It's like, it's the most painful experience. To be extended that kindness was just so sweet. And she even told me, it's so funny too. It feels like divine almost. She said that she flew with a newborn as well when she had a newborn at one point in her life. And so she knew how it felt. And I just thought, oh my gosh, how divine that I would be sitting next to this soul on this flight,
Yeah. And I also feel like, how normal is it for a partner of an actor to have to fly? Like some people I could never. So when I tell people, oh yeah, we flew with all of our babies when they're around 6 or 7 weeks old, and people are like, what? There's nothing that could make me do that. I'm like, well, we kind of just, you have to. You actually have to do the thing that you think you'll never do.
Right.
And I've actually been so lucky because Brenton's so, he knows that, I've loved being in Australia. I've loved not having to go anywhere or do anything during certain times, and he's kind of really honoured that. But yeah, sometimes you just have to do things that you don't think you would want to do. Because if you don't, it's like their whole job is, that whole project's out the door. They have to say no.
Right. Yeah, it's daunting for sure. I feel like I remember flying to and from South Africa with all the kids, and I had Alan with me, so that was nice. But they would have been 3, 2, and 6 months old when we flew there. And I remember, actually, it was on the way back. So on the way back, there were 4, 2.5, and a year old. So the difference between the 6-month-old in July when we flew there and the 1-year-old in December was that he was no longer nursing in December, and he could walk. So it was like there was it was a worse combination for a 24-hour flight, itinerary. I remember at one point turning to Alan and saying, it would be merciful if God took this flight down right now, because our kids were like all screaming at the same time, it's like there was no ending. And there was this woman also in business class who made it a point to say loudly, like she went up over her seat, gosh, what's going on with those kids? And it's just like,
do you want to take one? Because you can.
That's my worst.
Please. If you can do a better job, I am open to it. Take.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. So have you guys, you have always gone with Alan, haven't you? What did you guys end up doing when, I know this is you know, like a challenge that we share is like school age kids and the job, the biz. And I know that you obviously came to Toronto when I was there and the boys were in school, and then you decided to homeschool. I think it was because of COVID too, yeah?
Right. COVID kind of pushed us into homeschooling. And then I realized, well, I should say as a disclaimer that we've gone back and forth just based on Alan's workload. If we're going to be somewhere for 6 months, sometimes we don't have a rule book necessarily. We truly cross each bridge as we get there. And I think that's the big life lesson, is that when we try to, it's almost like we sit around and powwow and try to come up with a company policy for what we're going to do in all these different scenarios. And there's just no way to do that. It can feel, that's when it starts to feel overwhelming. It feels like none of this is ever going to work, and this job doesn't line up with having a family or having kids. I mean, it will work, but when you try to solve all the problems over the course of the 18 years, like as of today, what are we going to do for the next 18 years? That gets our wheels spinning. You know,
you just can't
I've realized
know.
you can't know, and you just have to work with the information that you have. And that's actually something I realized this past season when Alan was filming Reacher season 2, we were homeschooling in the fall. And then by December, our oldest was really missing school. And to his credit, he's the one who spent the most time in school. So he knows what he's missing, I guess. The other two don't really know what they're missing. My middle, he got pulled out of kindergarten for COVID. So it's never really been all that stable for him. Whereas Caleb was in kindergarten and first grade. And I think he was in second when COVID hit. I don't know. So my point is, in December, after homeschooling for the fall, Caleb was really talking about how much he missed his friends and how he wished he could go back to school. So we had a family meeting about that and decided that we would try out public school in Florida, like go back to our home base while Alan finished out Reacher season 2. So he was there January, February without us. And I like to treat big life changes as an experiment because it helps my mind process what it is. It helps me when it's not going well and I think to myself, why did we do this? This is terrible, whatever it is. I remind myself, oh yeah, this is just an experiment, you know, and I'm taking down results. And that just helps me get through it a little better. So it was an experiment that we were doing to put the kids back in school down in Florida. And I was secretly hoping that they would hate it and they'd be like, we want to be homeschooled again. They didn't hate it, or at least Caleb didn't hate it. I mean, they go to a great school in Florida. They have great teachers, super flexible. They're very understanding about Alan's work. And they for spring break, for instance, they let us take a week off before spring break, then obviously spring break, and the week off after spring break so that we could go to Turkey where Alan was filming this past spring. So they're very flexible in that regard. And they helped me get all the work ready so that we could work on it while we're gone. I'm sorry, what was I talking about? I was talking about these big
navigating schooling while you're
okay. Yeah. So the experiment of putting them back in school, for them, it was good. It was the best for my oldest. The other two were happy to go back to forest school, which Chloe, you did, right?
Yeah,
in
the kids
Toronto?
went to forest school in Toronto, and they absolutely loved it. They always ask, when are we going back? Because they wanted to go to school this year. And now they're like, so when's this finishing? Like, assuming that this is going to be finishing soon, because all things up until this point in time in their life, everything has been very temporary and fleeting. But now they're at this school and they're like, we've been here a while. Is this going to be, are we wrapping this up anytime soon?
Right.
Which is also interesting because I feel like your boys would maybe relate. You go somewhere and do something for a while and you're with a new group of friends and fresh faces, and then suddenly like you leave them and you go to the next thing, and everything is very temporary, which is like, there are many positives to it, but then I guess the lacking is like your community and those solid grounded connections and community that, you know, is also amazing. But,
Absolutely. And I think what I foresee being our biggest problem is going to be working through real relational issues, because we're not, like, if somebody's annoying in a class, we just leave in 2 months, you know? But in real life, you have to deal with that person for however long that class is, you know? And I see that being something that I'm trying to like be mindful of, that when we have conversations, when, you know, when they have relational issues with somebody on, like, in a summer camp or something, um, trying not to be like, well, don't worry, because we're going to be gone in a month, you know, because that's not really how to deal with life, right? Um, so yeah, anyway, we decided, after we came back down to Florida for school in the spring, that the experiment failed. And it's not because they didn't enjoy public school, but 2 out of 3 would have preferred forest school. Caleb loved forest school, but he was the oldest by quite a bit, and so he just didn't have any peers. But the big reason it failed is because Alan kind of fell apart with us all not being together. It just didn't work. And if that doesn't work, then we have to regroup, you know, because it's got to be that Alan and I are like facing forward side by side. And yeah, him being apart from his family, it didn't work
just
well.
doesn't
And
work.
I mean, no, it doesn't work. And um, it worked for the boys for a little bit, but they can't see what's ahead. Like, I can always see uh, a few months into them being away from Alan, I can always see the behavioral things beginning, which is the lack of his input, really. You know, it's like he's the daddy lion. He not only plays with them in a way that they need for their brains, but he corrects them in a way that they need for their humility and, you know, to become men, basically. So I can see the deficits begin.
That's something so big for them too, because they are at that age, like as of 7, 8, they're like, you know, they're really in mum's world up until 7 or 8, and they really need, you know, mum's presence and mum's nurturing and all of that. But I guess all of your boys now are like past that point where like dad's presence is really necessary, and like especially for boys, like I think there are tribes where, you know, the kids will stay with mum and the boys will stay with mum till 7, 8, and then they are with the men, and like that is like the transition, right? So yeah, but it's like I, you know, in Steiner, which is the education route we've taken, from 7, 8, like all kids, but especially boys need that male presence. They need, like, it gives them more than what mum's nurturing does.
Right.
But I mean, like, even I feel like when we've spent, like, we did 2 months apart, which is the longest, and then after that we decided that we'll never ever do anything like that again, because it was just so brutal. And not just because it's a long time and because behavior changes and like all the things, but kids just disconnect from their dads, and it's so important to not create that disconnection. And I feel like it's very unintentional, obviously, but when you take 2 months away from your dad, it happens. Like, there's a negative impact for sure. So yeah, I feel like we share that value too. Not, you know, being together is the most important thing, even though that could look so chaotic, like moving countries, moving to Turkey, moving to Bulgaria, like we've done it.
Right. Yeah. And do you find, Chloe, with Brenton, like for Alan, he, you know, he's very sensitive. As masculine as he is, he's sensitive. He needs to be needed. And it's like, you know, a natural human instinct. I think that sometimes if we are almost like going along in life too well, separated, it hurts him, you know, and he starts to feel useless, you know, and it takes away his purpose. And men have to have a things,
Yeah.
you know? So yeah, that's what we found most recently in our most recent experiment.
That's a really interesting observation. We obviously, in my family, our dynamic, we don't spend that much like those bigger gaps apart, but Toggle works away quite a bit still. He'll do like a week there, here, or a couple of days. I mean, he's going over to Europe soon. But I definitely see it in his demeanor when a trip's coming up and he's about to go away. Like his energy changes, and it's yeah, I mean, it's so easy as a woman to be like, yeah, well, you know, you get a break from kids, which is something that people, you know, we're all inclined to say. But at the same time, you know, there's like that heart pull for them that they're going to be away from their family. And it's still like, you're still a nuclear family. Like you're still part of, you know, that's part of you that you're leaving. So, yeah, I can relate to that. Smidge.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I think also you know, it's hard to relay to them when they're working, especially so busy, all the times that they come up in conversation with the kids when, you know, you're doing life together. You know, the kids were constantly saying that they miss dad or saying, oh, I wish dad were here to fix that or whatever. But it's not like at the end of the day, I have the 24 times it was talked about written down, you know, for him to like really reassure him that, no, you're part of this family.
You're wanted and you're needed.
Yeah, and we're missing a part of us when you're away too. Like it's not just, there's definitely a synergenic.
And you know what? I'm actually guilty of saying, and this has really just struck a chord with me because I'm often say like, you know, sometimes it's easier when Brenton's gone because I like run a tight ship and everyone's like in bed. There's no bullshit. It's just like boom, boom, boom. And I've said that and now I'm hearing this conversation. I'm like, damn it.
No, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, also there's just the very practical sense of like Alan eats for 4 people. So when he is not there,
I believe you.
Yeah, I can make a pot of soup and it'll last like 5 days. And the resistance I get instead of having to make extra food if he were here is that I'm forcing my kids to eat chili for a week, you know, like you're gonna eat it. But yeah, I mean, there's those very small things that are not, you know, of course they're like more meaningful than having to make extra dinner at night. But yeah, those small things that just, you know, you get into this routine, you kind of like buckle down and go through the hurricane, even though it might not be a pure hurricane. But yeah, it feels like the time away from them is certainly a deficit that you just cope with.
Go ahead.
I have a bit of a question, and I think I've spoken to you about this as well, but I'd love to hear your perspective, Kat. So, I mean, for the average person out there, and I wouldn't know what that's like, but when you're a mother, you've got multiple children and your partner. There are so many things just in that scenario, so many issues that occur, so many trials and tribulations to navigate. Then in your experience, like throw in travel, which is just a huge thing that I don't think any of us consider fully unless we sit down and break for a second. But then also like throw in Hollywood and this, like it's a huge, but like that is a huge big boulder of an issue that like I mean I think I need to protect my children from, you know, so many I want to protect their childhood. Like that's one of my massive things at the moment. I want my kids to have a childhood. Today's day and age is so hard to do that. But when you've got Hollywood where you've got kids that are being exposed to so much and you guys are out there, like Alan is well known, and you guys have like really thrown into that. So it would just add an extra layer of how do I protect my kids? How do I protect myself? Like that's a lot of external energy coming your way. So I was just wondering how you go about navigating that hurdle, that big thing.
Well, I mean, I will say from an early age, we had the boys visit set as much as possible for the sake of um, them just getting to see how it's done, you know?
Mhm.
And I remember distinctly bringing them on the set of Blood Drive, which was, we were in South Africa, there's a show called Blood Drive. Uh, it's, it was a fun show, but it's kind of a grindhouse. In retrospect, it probably wasn't the best set for them to come visit. It basically cars run on human blood. Um,
Oh,
and at one point,
wow. Okay, I
and
wasn't expecting that.
yeah. Um,
Who thought of that?
At one, I know. At one point, I think it was Eden saw on set, and it wasn't like a horror movie. I don't know. I like it. It probably wasn't the best day for him to visit set. There were all these prosthetic arms and legs and heads and stuff, and it was like, you know, he saw one and he started crying, and I had no idea that we were like walking into something like that. Other than other than the fact that the show was called Blood Drive, but in that regard, we've always tried to just show them how it works so that they don't have to be scared or I mean, the thing that probably bothers me the most, and therefore I'm the most determined to demystify, is the glorification of celebrity. You know,
Mm.
um, like the idea. I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing inherently to look up to someone, but it's so easy to look up to a celebrity and you you only have this much information and um you also are only aware of like what's in your brain about that person. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, your
it's through the
perspective.
filter yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's through the filter of your life experience that you are experiencing the existence of that person, which is um just leads to this idolization that grows into an objectification. It doesn't even have to be a sexual thing, but like there's this objectification of celebrity that I am determined for my kids to not experience, you know?
Mm. And
And
I
I
guess
think that we're in the prime. Yeah.
yeah, you're about to say what I was going to say, which I think you're in like the best position to be able to show that too.
Exactly.
So
Yes. Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's a perk for sure.
Mm.
So yeah, I know what you mean. I guess when it comes to the scary side of Hollywood, or even like, I mean, not that we let them watch anything, you know, with explicit scenes or anything, but even like sexualization of Hollywood, um, you know, they're aware that Alan has to kiss somebody else in a scene. And
Mm.
it's so funny though, it's actually never come, they've never said like, Mom, how do you feel about that or
Oh
anything?
my God.
Because
Well,
I
I'm
don't,
glad you
I
brought
actually,
this up because so many people want to know about this.
oh
And
yeah,
they've
that's
asked
the big
me
one.
to ask you, and they always ask me too, like,
Oh,
how do
funny.
you cope with the sex scenes? And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
you share your side and then I'll share
Okay,
mine
I'll go
because it might
first.
be more
Okay. Well,
interesting.
my perspective is I do not, I mean, look, I don't want Alan to be in a porn, but I don't care what happens in front of the camera. It does not bother me. I understand that it's a part of the story. And I also know that it's not real, you know, it's not it's for the art, it's for the storytelling, but I do care what happens behind the camera, you
Mm.
know?
Mm.
And I think that in Hollywood, you just have to hold yourself to such a high standard because there's so many people who go there who are on set just to work, but then there's some people who aren't there just to work. Like some people have a bit of a summer camp mentality, you know?
Mm.
Mm.
And you just hope that the scene partner is there to work, you know? Like I have to trust not only Alan, of course, But I also have to trust the scene partner, and there is trust that is implicit in that. It's not so much, it's not the same kind of trust I have for Alan, because I know Alan made a vow to me. It's more like the kind of trust that you have for your waiter not to spit in your food,
Yeah.
It's like an expectation.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I agree. It's like, if you've ever been to a set and you see how awkward it is, there's like 100 lights and there's 100 people, and often the woman is like pretty shit scared and not that into it, not that into being completely exposed to so many people. But it's awkward, and so it's not real. And I actually take my hat off to them for making it ever look or feel real, because I don't know how anybody would do that. So yeah, there's like a big awkward element to it. But yeah, I agree. It's like the off camera, what happens, and all the connections and all of the, chemistry that you perhaps build behind the camera that I would feel more.
Yeah, because that is real, right?
Yeah, that is real.
But it's the same thing that you could foster if you were an accountant or at a law firm. It's the same dynamic behind the camera. So those standards, I feel like, are for each married couple to decide.
Yeah.
But yeah, in front of the camera, it just doesn't bother me.
Yeah, same.
I do wonder about that though, because especially like when you're in long-term relationships, which we're all in, like you don't quite understand the the spiritualness of it. Like there's an extra layer to it that's like Hollywood could never in a million years show, and like the intimacy of, seeing your partner have children, like grow a belly and a baby come out of them. And I don't know if Alan ever caught your babies, but actually, has Brenton caught any babies?
No.
Well, Togger's caught 3. So these things that like level up intimacy on such a huge level. It's so beyond nudity. It's so beyond
ass grabbing.
Or being even like, you could be nude and close to someone and it is never going to even scratch the surface of intimacy that you have with someone who you've created a life and a family with, who you've, said vows to soon. And yeah, so I feel like, I wonder, people who would go into that situation having not been in a relationship that has experienced all those things. And even I think one of the biggest things for us was going through something really, really hard and coming out the other side. We can just talk about my relationship here, but me and Togger have gone through the fucking throats, and I've alluded to this a bagillion times, and one day we will release the episode, but we've gone through some serious throats where we almost just, called it quits to it. And the intimacy that comes with being able to build back from that and learn from that and grow, you can't create that with another person in a 3 months.
In a sex scene.
It's so different. And I think, that's it is a bit of a trickery when you're watching a movie or a TV show and it looks like this chemistry, like it's amazing that they can create that. But the reality of it is you haven't, that's not what's there. They're acting. And talking about co-hosts and stuff, I do wonder what the difference would be with a co-host who has created their own family and had those experiences versus someone who,
absolutely,
maiden.
Listen, anybody who's on set, it's not to say that you have to have done that to understand this, but basically when people are there to work, they don't have time for any of the stupid little games. They're not there for that. And yes, if they already have a family, already have that firm foundation, they don't have time for that. And nor are they looking for that, because you're right. They do know what real is. There's actually a part of the Velveteen Rabbit that makes me this conversation makes me think of, because I'm trying to remember how it goes. It's like, I thought I had it. Uh, I think it's like the rabbit asks what real is, and the horse says, it's a thing that happens to you when a child loves you for a long, long time. Oh, sorry, it makes me cry. When a child loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real. And the rabbit asks, does it hurt? And the skin horse says, sometimes. But when you're real, you don't mind being hurt. And then he asks, does it happen all at once, or like being wound up, or bit by bit? And he says, it doesn't happen all at once. You become. It takes a long time. That's why it doesn't happen often to people who break easily or have sharp edges or have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you're real, most of your hair has been loved off and your eyes drop out and you get loose in the joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all, because once you're real, you can't be ugly except to people who don't understand. And I feel like that.
It's definitely the wife of an actor.
That's everything, right? That's people who come onto set for summer camp. That's people who make mean comments online. That's everything. Those are just the people who don't understand. They just don't get it. They don't know what they don't know yet.
Yeah.
You know?
And you have to feel for that too. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, look, before this, I had a massive hiatus offline, and then we started a podcast, and I'm like, all right, so now we're back on social media. And I didn't know how like nasty it could get. And we've had a couple of nasty comments, and I'm like, oh my God, we've hurt someone. But then they keep nastier and nastier. And I'm like, oh no, they're actually just hurt. Like they're hurt. Yeah. And then like they'll find any outlet to like that out.
Yeah. So, well, that's something else I wanted to talk to you about, is like Hollywood and the movies, is like all the news and the media. It's like typically Hollywood actors that are married to each other, they end up being married to another 50 people, and it's pretty incestual, and everyone gets divorced and everyone gets married and divorced and married and divorced.
Back to that like disposable culture.
Yeah. And so people like from the outside looking in were probably like, oh, that's, you know, like that's not going to last or something, or they'll just be on to the next person. And obviously you and Alan have kind of, you know, like one of the exceptions in that story. And I know that it's so fucking hard to be in that, you know, in that world. And, you know, it's one thing to have a strong, resilient marriage in a normal life, and then to have a strong, resilient marriage in a life that literally wants parts of you, and, you know, you're stretched and pulled all over the place, and you have to figure things out that you probably didn't expect to have to figure out or to have to go through. And I feel like you guys have done that pretty well, and I just love to have you speak on that, about kind of getting through the shitstorm of, you know, marriage and all that it can bring in this world, in this kind of, in the lifestyle that we both live.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Certainly this road.
Number one.
Like you're high right now, aren't you? That's how you cope.
I am on my CBD oil daily.
Yeah, certainly. You know, the truth is, though, if I knew everything I knew now from the beginning, I'd still choose this road. But it is a call to action almost every day to remember what matters in life. You know, like I think sometimes I think to myself, on my deathbed, am I going to be thinking about what user 19177667423 said? You know? I hope not. But
I'm going to say no.
Is that bot? That bot's going to be the last thing you think about.
Right. But I do, like, it doesn't change the fact that it does feel like an invasion when somebody is, you know, that goes back to the objectification of celebrity that I mentioned earlier. There is an ownership of, in this instance, Alan, in some people's mind. And it does belong to them because it's the synapse in their brain through the filter that they see life and through their experience. So they, even though it might be a very warped view, whatever it is, whatever the expectation is, that he's absolutely perfect, that he's the perfect Christian, that he's the perfect Thad Castle, which is like a character that he played on an old show that, you know, was crude but funny. There are these expectations that these people own, and then they throw them onto you in our real life that I don't subscribe to, you know, some of which are like, you know, it's a lot of women who I get comments or DMs from that are like, you're not pretty enough to be his wife, you know, which is like, I can't believe that somebody would spend their time sending something like that to like, I think to myself, where would I need to be in life to send that kind of message to someone? And it's definitely lower than where I am right now. You know, like I cannot fathom saying that to somebody. But also I realize that they are on their plane in life is one of everlasting beauty pageant, you know, like the depth of their relationship is such that it ends there. And I don't subscribe to that being the most meaningful thing in a relationship. I mean, God knows when you know somebody for 23 years, you stop seeing past any handsomeness and you only see them for who they are, you know.
Accidentally peed on the toilet seat again.
Right. I mean, Alan is an amazing, astonishing person. He's so intelligent. He's absolutely brilliant, so creative, such an artist. I adore him, but I also see him for who he is. And I'm not a yes man. Like, I'm never going to be a yes man. I'm never going to be a Stepford wife. It's the Velveteen Rabbit. Like, I want something real. And I have to be reminded when I get a mean comment or DM or something like that, that those people just aren't there yet, you know? And there's no substitute for time, you know, there's no substitute for experience. And the only way to gain wisdom is through time and experience. So they're just not there yet. You know, I think about when we used to live in LA, we had this fence that connected to an alley, and these kids, I say kids, they were probably like anywhere from 12 to 18, 19. They would come graffiti the fence all the time. It drove me nuts. And I mean, I actually wish, looking back, I wish I didn't get as bothered by it, but I did. But I like to think about them now, maybe 10, 15 years later, as they might look at that memory and say, oh man, remember when I used to go graffiti this fence? Oh, I wish I would have done that. What a waste of time, you know? And I think of these people who make mean comments or like pass these judgments as is only a matter of time before they look back and they say, oh, why did I send that to that person? Why, you know, I can't believe I would do that. And these strikes of, I guess, anger or pain or jealousy is graffitiing on somebody else's heart, you know? And yeah, I guess I just know that in time, I might not be conscious of their existence when they have this revelation, but there will be a revelation, you know?
Yeah, and that's what I always think too, is like what people perceive to be who they are. So Brenton and Alan, people think that they know them and they know who they are and they know their story and they know what kind of person they are and how they must parent and be a partner. But like there's actually no way of knowing. It's just little snippets of the work that they've ever done or the interviews that they've ever done, which are hardly ever really and true insight into who they are. And yeah, it's crazy that other woman would be like, I could do it better than you, or I deserve to be in the position that you're in. But really like the grit, the patience, the resilience and everything it actually takes to step into, you know, providing a family for a person in the arts, being the person that goes with and often puts your creativity, your life, your expertise, skills on the back burner. Like, fuck, that's a lot. And it takes a certain person to be able to actually navigate that. And so
I agree. Oh my gosh, there is an art to loving an artist.
yeah.
And there are no Nielsen ratings for that. You know?
Yeah, I totally agree. But yeah, I'm sure there's so much, you know, I mean, I know there's so much to Alan and to Brenton and to all the artists, you know, and to partner, you know, with an artist is just such a wild ride sometimes.
God, just being friends of a partner.
Yeah, it is.
I'm like, oh God, this is too much for me. Like, shit. Like the ups and downs of like this opportunity and oh no, it didn't work out. And I'm just like, like I can't live that shit.
Oh my gosh,
too, right? It's true for our connections to other women is freaking hard too, because like, you know, you'd be the same, Kat, like you travel and you go through those kind of pivotal years where you are supposed to connect to community and make those, you know, solid foundational friends. And, you know, for me, I spent that time in Canada going back and forth, and it's hard as women to be like, I'll be back. And I hope we can just get back and, you know, we'll be like on solid ground still.
Let me
it's
just
like, it's
drop into your life again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Totally.
that's such a challenge too, is having, you know, your staples. Your staples?
Yeah.
Yes.
How have you navigated that?
Absolutely,
Have you got a mum crew?
I do. Well, you know, Bianca is, Chloe, you know Bianca, right? She's in Toronto. Well, it's so funny, actually. It's through our friendship
Yes.
that Ryan became Alan's stunt double, which I absolutely love, and I'll absolutely take, well, Bianca and I will take all the credit for it. But she's, oh my gosh, she's an angel.
She's amazing. I miss her so.
We're back with a scenery change, people, just because
Sorry about that.
we needed to plug in a computer, but we're G.
We're talking about navigating. Like, how do you navigate your community?
Or mum friends.
Yeah, mum friends.
Luckily with technology, I'm able to keep in touch with some core girlfriends who really get it. You know, they're also very familiar with the ups and downs and like, we're going here, we're going there. Oh, never mind. None of that's happening. You know, they can deal with all the changes. But yeah, it's mostly through voice notes, phone calls. I actually have a girls trip coming up in a couple of weeks where this core group of girls is going to meet for the weekend, you know, and they're all moms as well. So, you know, there's nothing like COVID to kind of recalibrate the core of who your community is, right? And for us, it was like just our family based on where we lived. We were in Florida, and all these girlfriends are either out in LA or up in Seattle. But that was a reminder of just how important it is to, I guess, sometimes you can get lost in the busyness of life. You can start living for so many other people. And I feel like that time was a reminder of like, oh yeah, when it all comes down to it, like when it's life or death, it's family, you know? So I try to keep that in mind because ultimately we just have to do what's best for our family, you know? Which is another lesson that we learned with the experiment of, you know, going back down to Florida, and Alan finishing up season 2 of Reacher. We decided, no, we just got to stay together. You know?
Yeah.
But I would say also this business really, it's funny because it's like, this business kind of forces us to live day by day, right? Like you can't, we can't say 6 months from now where we're going to be. what we're going to be doing. Can't necessarily plan a vacation or anything like that. All that kind of stuff has to be last minute. And sometimes that can feel really daunting. But one thing I realized recently is like, oh, wait a second. That's actually how it is for everybody on this earth. It's just that this business forces us to live in the moment. All the other control, the idea that you do know where you're going to be in 6 months is an illusion. You know, we don't know for sure.
Yeah, so true.
And so I try to look at Alan's career as like the thing that keeps us awake to that fact, you know.
That's really true. It's like
Absolutely.
it's like unconscious grounding.
Yeah.
I just was thinking of some of the questions that we had. I feel like some of the questions that basically most people just want to know how you've been able to like survive your marriage and your and
Which I think is a good question for every marriage.
yeah.
Because not a lot of them survive these days. So
Yeah, like what are some
how
of
do
the
you
things
survive your marriage?
Yeah, like what are some of the core things that, or like if they even are any, like the things that have just kind of like gotten you guys through, like the priorities or lessons.
Yeah, you know, I think that I'm always fascinated by the ebb and flow of our, I guess, how we kind of take turns in the wisdom position, you know? Like when I'm being unwise, Alan pulls me into being wise again. And then when he's being unwise, I pull him in. You know, we're kind of always checking each other in that regard. I would say if I had to sum it up in one thought, it would be that ultimately we choose to turn towards each other, you know, even in um, arguments, fights, the stress of life. One of us will decide, like, one of us puts our pride down and turns toward the other, you know, and then that in turn motivates the other person to put their pride down and turn. And I think that's how it works. I mean, I don't know, but I feel like that's a common theme. Yeah. What about for you both?
Oh, we just worked on our sex life when
Well, I mean, I guess it's the same, right? It's like what you're saying, Kat, is more like an emotional thing or like showing up to, because like if two people are fighting, it's obviously easier to just ghost each other and walk away. But the transformative element or the opportunity is when one person surrenders and then the other person softens into that surrender and they're like, okay, well, let's just tackle this shit head on and see what's here. Because often, I mean, I know I've observed this in my own relationship is when, you know, you're butting heads and one person walks away or one person's not being willing to open up, it's a missed opportunity to level up. And so I guess that's what you're saying is like when one of you's being unwise, the other or whoever, whatever the dynamic is, if someone can be like, okay, like let's stop here and, you know, whatever it might look like. But yeah, I feel like that is so important.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the death to a relationship is when both people are held captive by their ego, you know? When you can let that go, you can start to make progress. And, you know, in couples counseling, we regularly have counseling. And I feel like it's really important, especially in our industry. But sometimes I feel like if you say you're in couples counseling, people think that you're going down in flames or something. But I don't feel like it's much different than taking your car to get a tune-up. You know, sometimes you need a third party to help you get the scaffolding in place before any sort of collapse, you know? But we're learning in counseling really how to communicate. And not that we don't know how to talk to each other, but I do think that couples can start to get into a pattern of just wanting to be heard and somebody has to stop and listen to the other person and show that they're hearing what they're saying, or else you're never going to get anywhere, you know? So I don't like the answer communication because I feel like it's so generic, but deep, meaningful communication where you stop a vicious cycle of what about me, that tends to get us moving along, you know?
Yeah, and that's something that we keep hearing, isn't it? When the other person is the one that, like, take the spotlight off you and put it on your partner for a minute. Often we hear that that's kind of where a little bit of traction takes place because, it's less about you and more about them.
Yeah, and I think too, like, because, I mean, for example, on the mornings that we're recording, I'm a dragon because we've got to like clear the house out and get kids ready, get out of here. I need to set up. I need to actually like wake up. And I can often make a snarky remark here and there. And I think something that's brilliant, which again only really comes from having spent time with each other. Like we've been together for nearly 14 years now, and it only comes with having spent that time together that my husband can turn around and be like, this is her stress talking and it's not to me. And he can like put that down. And it's the same when he's really hectic getting ready for a trip and he gets snarky. I can be like, okay, it's the stress talking. It's like he's already feeling that pull away from the family. It's not actually at me. And you can like just get out of like the mud of the situation and like be up here and see
zoom out a little bit.
And perceive it for what it is rather than like taking that on board and being like, well, if you're going to be like that, then I'm going to be like this. And which I feel is like part of that disposable culture too. Like we've had chats about like hookup culture and how like people are just disposable and how all of these like intimacy is not really intimacy anymore because, you know, you can just go, well, if that person hasn't got it right, well, there's another person over there. And it's like that leaky energy constantly. But when you're in a committed relationship, you kind of realize that you don't want to be disposing all the time. Like you want to work through your shit and you want to get out of the mud and be able to see people for who they are rather than just their reactions or, anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah. The grass is greener where you don't have to mow it, you know? And it's only a matter of time. You're like the trajectory of that culture is one of emptiness and loneliness, you know? And I just think that anything worth doing is going to be hard, you know?
Speaking of hard, babe, how do you deal with all that testosterone in the house?
Oi, so I did my research and stalked both you and Alan because when Chloe's like, oh yeah, my friend like dating Alan, and I now that you mentioned Hunger Games, as soon as you said that, I'm like, oh yeah, they're like I recognize him. But I had a quick stalk and I was just like, oh my God, how do you even like go near that? Like, what is going on with that situation there?
And the boys, like 3 boys and Alan, like testosterone levels must be like at least 1 million. And you're like this the lone woman in the house.
I almost wonder if I'm like a person who's been, you know, like somebody who gets kidnapped and grows up thinking that this is their, like, I don't know any different. It's probably a good thing.
A form of Stockholm syndrome. Like.
Right. I don't know any different. Sometimes I think to myself, when I start to think about, number one, I don't want to have a 4th child. And I also wouldn't want to risk it being another boy. I love being a boy mom. But I wouldn't have a 4th just for the chance at a girl. I think to myself, you know what? I was not meant to be a girl mom. This is shown by what my life is, number one, but it's also shown by how I am unable to even take care of myself. Like I'm not a girly girl. I could not be doing my daughter's hair or, all the things that go along with at least being a girl in our culture, I guess. But I think I was just destined to be a boy mom.
You're amazing.
It's impressive.
Yeah, even our dog is male.
Oh, Bear. And he's massive as well.
He is.
Oh my gosh. Well, this conversation has been so lovely. I feel like there was so much more that I wanted to talk to you about, but we'll be here all day. I think you're absolutely amazing. And to all those trolls out there who think they know, I mean, I feel like for the last almost decade that I've known you, I've always just seen you as this beautiful, intelligent powerhouse of a woman that's just making all the people in your family's dreams come true, especially Alan's. And to provide a family for an actor, artist, musician is no walk in the park. So I take my hat off to you, my love.
Oh, well, same to you, Chloe. I've always looked up to you and felt very inspired by, I mean, not only do you have more kids than me, but you definitely travel further than I do each year to get to where you guys need to be. And you're that much further away from family. I mean, truly.
Well, thank you. You're amazing. We're both amazing. We're all amazing.
Oh, yeah, look. I know, it's a hard life. It's a hard life.
Well, you do live a similar lifestyle, babe. Let's be honest. But no, I hope that we, as much as I'm like happy that there's not another season of Titans, I'm also like, damn, I kind of miss Toronto and I kind of miss everyone. And so, maybe.
It's a good problem to have.
Yeah. I've got FOMO thinking that like we introduced Bianca and Ryan to you and Alan, and now like you're with her and I'm not. I'm like, what is going on?
I know.
But
I know it would be fun for the six of us to be. Yeah. I mean, everything shoots here, so I'm sure you guys will be back.
That's what I keep thinking. I'm like, weirdly, I'm asking to go back to Toronto, and I never thought that I'd ask to go back to Toronto. But like putting it out there and putting it out there to the universe. Hopefully we get to see you guys soon.
Yes, I would love that. Well, it was so nice to get to chat with you both. I won't be, I had a couple of nights of no sleep before this, so I'm glad to know that I'll be able to sleep tonight. I was a little nervous.
Oh my God.
We're not that scary.
It's just like catching up over coffee.
Yeah.
You're going to drop that one every single episode now.
Maybe it's a good opportunity. Speaking of trolls, like I think this is a good opportunity to say that every single episode, almost, me and Kashia have said we just love catching up over coffee and validating our thoughts
opinions
and feelings and opinions. And it's because we got trolled by somebody on one of our earlier episodes, and they obviously had some like
gripe.
Yeah, they were triggered by the content that we'd shared and they didn't like it. Anyway, they went ahead and like gave us a bad rating and said somewhere that these girls pay for guests to come on and to get to validate their opinions over coffee. And we thought that was hilarious because
it is.
It's true, but we just don't pay anybody.
Paying, without paying, but
no money has changed hands here. Yeah.
So,
oh my gosh, that is hilarious.
It's hilarious.
We just keep dropping it in every episode. Like,
now we mention it in every episode. Hopefully that person's listening and realizes that we've got.
But I doubt it because I think it was just
like
a drop a bomb and like run.
No, anyway.
That is hilarious.
It's been so lovely. Oh my gosh. And yes, thank you so much for sharing.
Well, thanks for having me. This was a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to the Road to Wisdom podcast. To join the journey, you can follow us on Instagram at theroadtowisdom.podcast and at www.theroadtowisdompodcast.com. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. We look forward to seeing you next week with more juicy content.